Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 39. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Velvet Eau Claire, as always, your guide through all of our secrets, all the behind-the-scenes, saucy, sexy, sometimes they're not so sexy, the secrets of the ladies and gents behind the tassels. Thank you so much for pressing play today. Whether you are a brand new listener joining just for this episode, and will, of course, then turn to subscribe because you're going to love it so much. You're going to want to hear all of our interviews and tips over the next few months. Or if you've already been listening since we debuted with our very first episode, number 1 was back in October of 2015. So if you've been listening with us the whole time, or you're a brand new listener, or anywhere in between, thank you so much for listening today. I do have a fantastic interview ready to go for you, and I can't wait for you to have a listen. The fabulous Miss Holly Rebelle is coming to us from the American Southwest, and she is just amazing. She has been performing, as you'll hear, for over 12 years now in the burlesque community, not just performing in general, for over 12 years. So this woman has a lot of experience. She's seen a lot of changes. She's had a lot of ups and downs over the years, and she has some really amazing things to share. So I know that you're going to really love everything that she has to say. Plus, she's really funny, and her name, half of her name comes from a little Star Wars reference as well, which automatically makes her great in my book. So definitely have a listen and take in everything that she has to share. If you're interested in any of the things that she talks about and how to get a hold of her more, of course, all the links are going to be over at the show notes for this episode, which will be at burlesquestrippeddown.com/Holly, Holly. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right in to my interview with the beautiful, the fabulous, the talented Miss Holly Rebelle. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you've been waiting for all week. I know. I can feel it. I can feel you have been waiting all week long. I have the darling, the talented Miss Holly Rebelle with me today. How you doing, Holly?
I'm doing great, Velvet. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us just a little bit kind of about yourself? Here on Burlesque Stripped Down, we're all about getting to know you, stuff that we couldn't just get from just going to your website, right? So tell us just a little bit about your background and who you are.
I have been doing burlesque in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 12 years. And initially, I had never thought of myself this way until Jo Weldon came and stayed at my house for 4 or 5 days for Southwest Burlesque Showcase. And she told me, or she said directly to me, you are a pioneer. And I had never thought of myself in that context before. But when I started doing burlesque 12 years ago, there really wasn't the burlesque community that we all know of it now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us really had to fight to get into venues, explain what burlesque is. A lot of burlesque performers now are much more out in their day jobs or in their personal lives. And back then, I felt like I had to keep it very, very secretive. And so it was definitely a very different community 12 years ago. And I've loved watching it change. It was really neat. And then it's neat to think that I've watched this huge growth happen, locally and nationally. And so I have performed all over the United States, everywhere from Los Angeles to Boston, Massachusetts. Cool. I hold a couple of titles. I hold Best Group in Boston and was later asked back to headline their festival alongside Jo Weldon, and that's how I had met her. And then I hold the title in 2012 of Best Solo at Texas Burlesque Festival and Best Group at Texas Burlesque Festival. I also have had the complicated feelings and emotions of having been selected as an alternate for competition at Burlesque Hall of Fame, not once, but twice. Oh. So the only consolation I have to that is it is harder to be selected as an alternate than it is to actually get in the competition. Really? So Because there's only, I believe there's only 2 alternates per category.
Gotcha.
And so there's, I think, 10 to 12 competitors, I want to say. So I have been one of those 2 people twice.
Well,
So
that's something to be proud of. Absolutely.
Yeah. But so anyway, I've had an interesting, that's a lot of complicated feelings with that, because you know you're doing something right, but you're just not quite there yet.
Well, I think that's really interesting, though, too, because I mean, it shows that just someone who is as experienced as you are, you've been around a long time, and you still deal with some of these kind of things, and those complicated emotions, as you put it,
absolutely.
And, being a long standing performer in the industry does not necessarily mean that you're exempt from those kind of things at all.
Oh, not at all. And one of the girls that I danced in my company, Burlesque Noir, she actually said something really profound last year. She said, it's really easy to take things personally because art is personal. And that really struck me, and it's something that I've now quoted her on a couple of times on social media, and it's etc. Because it is easy to make it feel personal and make it and have hard and complicated feelings, because art is personal, especially in burlesque, because we are given the freedom and the privilege, in my opinion, to create our own work, where that's not the case in a lot of other performing industries.
That's so true. It really does add in that even more of that thing of being personal. I mean, it's already personal enough. I know sometimes when I've been performing theater before, and those aren't even my words, and I still take it personally if someone doesn't like it or they don't, or any criticism, I still take that personally. And that's not even my words that are on stage. I'm portraying someone else's creation.
Right.
And so it's in a situation like burlesque, or in, if you're making, if you're a sculpture artist or anything like that, it's really personal, because it is. It's coming from you.
It's coming from you. It's coming from your heart. It's coming from your soul, and suddenly it's like, well, somebody says something about it, or you get alternate listed, or you don't get into a festival, or, whatever the circumstance is. It's hard not to take those things personally,
Yeah.
So we all have the complicated feelings.
It's true. I mean, do you have any ways that you kind of that help you to deal with that?
Oh, let's see. Gosh, one of my Burlesque best friends, Lola Spitfire, out of Colorado Springs, known that girl for a very long time. She likes to remind me to give no fucks, and it's kind of become a motto of ours. And when I'm dealing with those complicated feelings, I'll often text or call her, and she'll be like, "Holly Rebelle, why are you giving a big fuck?" And she'll kind of bring it back home. And at the end of the day, we're not doing surgery or flying airplanes. Lives are not at stake,
Right.
But sometimes we kind of act like that's the case.
Yeah.
So, I do try to remind myself to stay grounded and really try to keep perspective. I'm also extremely fortunate that I have a very supportive husband who has been with me through this entire burlesque journey, and he loves the performing arts, and he is such a grounded individual, and he's so willing to talk things out with me and to talk through those complicated feelings. And he, over the years, has built up a lot of insight in himself. And so he really helps me process a lot of that too. So I'm really, really thankful to have that in my life.
That's really wonderful. I think it's so important to have a good support structure, whether it is a partner, a romantic partner, a business partner, or just, sisters or brothers, that are just really there, that can remind you of that perspective, remind you to give no fucks, and just kind of keep you grounded. And then you do the same thing for them, it goes both ways whenever anybody's having a good time. I love it. I might steal it a little bit. Just give no fucks. I like it.
Give no fucks. No, at Burlesque Hall of Fame, I made bracelets for me and Lola this year that said no fucks. She got me a t-shirt that says no fucks. Yeah, it's kind of become a thing. And then a good little story, when Trixie Little won the crown at Beehoff last year, she stuck that trophy between her legs, pulled out a cigarette, and started smoking on stage. And after that, I walked up to her and I said, "Girl, you are the queen of no fucks." And then I didn't realize she had started hashtagging Queen of No Fucks, and that has become her tagline. And then I was just at Colorado. Yeah, I was just at Colorado Burlesque Festival, and her and I were sitting at the bar just catching up a little bit because I've known her for a long time. And she said, I don't know if you've noticed or remember, but you gave me my new tagline, Queen of No Fucks. She goes, do you remember that? And I said, oh, absolutely. And she goes, I just loved it because you just came up to me and you were like, girl, you just got up there, took that trophy, and you just gave no fucks. And so she took that, and I'm thrilled she ran with it, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to remember no fucks. And also, like, especially when it comes to BHOF, that at the end of the day, we're all there to celebrate our art form, and that the competition is definitely a great way to do that. But at the end of the day, you know, back at the goat farm, etc., it wasn't this huge stressful event that we've kind of made it now. And so I think it is important to come back and, like I said, give no fucks.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Little shout out to Trixie there.
I love it. That's awesome. The queen of no fucks.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's cool. So that's a little bit about kind of your past and like, you know, where you've been over the years. What do you have right now or in the pipeline coming up very soon that you are the most excited about?
Oh, great. So one of the things I did do is I founded the award-winning troupe Burlesque Noir. Right. And I did that, I guess it would be 11 years ago. Wow. And this year on January 1st, I actually retired the company. And it was just time and had to process all of that and get to that point. But I did retire the company. And so that has been a huge change in what I've been doing as a burlesque performer. And but what I'm excited about, I have a lot of things to be excited about right now. In a couple weeks, I go to Portland Burlesque Festival. Which I was selected for competition, and I haven't competed in burlesque, well, since I was competing at BHOF with my group. And then I kind of haven't competed since 2012 as a soloist in Texas. So I'm pretty excited and nervous to do that.
You'll do great. It'll be fun.
So I'm pretty excited about that. And then my dance partner and I got selected to perform at New York Burlesque Festival. And I haven't applied or been to New York Burlesque Festival since 2010. So I'm super excited to go back there. Yeah, I'm super, super excited. And then what I am very excited about is I'm bringing Tigger to New Mexico. He's never been here for our Halloween show on October 29th. And so that'll be here in Albuquerque. And so I do try to bring in a fairly large name burlesque performer to Albuquerque at least once, if not twice a year. I think it's good for the community here. New Mexico is a pretty poor state, and not everybody has the privilege or access to travel. There's not really professional burlesque performers here. We all have day jobs. So I try to bring somebody in here so that our community can see what's going on in the rest of the world, or the rest of the nation at least. So I'm really excited about those things, Velvet.
Understandable. Those are some super exciting things.
So I'm feeling that. More than anything, though, is this year with the folding of my dance company, I made a big promise to myself to do work and art that is true to myself, whether I felt that the audience would like it or not, which is kind of a topic of controversy a little bit, because, you know, there's definitely, and I agree with the argument that you should think about your audience. Absolutely. But one of the things I am known for is creating really risky acts and challenging the audience to begin with. But over the last couple years, I started creating numbers that I felt might get me into BHOF or get me into festivals or get me more corporate gigs. And I really started to not enjoy doing that kind of performance. And so I kind of this year made a promise to myself that I would go back to creating the work that was inside my heart and soul. And the work that I'm working on this year is even more challenging to the audience than anything I've done in the past. But I'm so excited to present it, which is thrilling to me. I've kind of coined that I'm rendering myself unbookable. I go to Colorado Springs a lot. I go perform up there a lot. And I have a very good photographer friend. And I had a recording of this act that my dance partner, Kit Combat, and I are working on. And we just had like a rehearsal video, so to speak. And I was like, oh, Anthony, you need to see what we're working on. And he watched it and he looks at me and he goes, no burlesque producer is going to book this. You cannot do this at a burlesque show. And I laughed at him. I said, well, it's a good thing the first producer to book this is in Colorado Springs and we're doing it in September. So we'll see. It's definitely a challenging number, but I'm back to doing work that I'm just so excited about. And so I think that's really what is driving me and what I'm most excited about in my career now, especially after having been doing this for 12 years. So I'm excited to get back to that. I'm excited to challenge the audience. I'm excited to take risks. So yeah, that's where I'm at, Velvet.
Absolutely. Well, and that's really beautiful that you you acknowledge the fact that, you've been doing this for 12 years. There's different phases kind of that you go through. There are times when it's totally okay to be doing acts, that, I mean, it's a little controversial. I know, how much do we want to pander to the audience and, try to just be bookable and things. It still should resonate with you. We're not saying that it shouldn't. But, there's times in your career where you have to kind of focus on those kind of things more. And now you've entered a new phase where you're going back to this heart. And I love that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. That I'm just in this whole new phase. So I'm really excited about it and excited to start presenting that work. And it might not put me on the festival circuit for a while, but I'm doing what I want to do. So
absolutely, if it resonates with you and it's where you need to be right now, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to keep an eye on that and see what you're doing that's challenging out there.
For sure.
Very good. So let's back up a little bit more. We talked a little bit about your past, but I'd love to go back to the very beginning because you've been performing now for 12 years, which is a dozen years. That's a dozen, right? Yes, that's like donuts. All right. Yeah. That's a long time. But if you can remember back, how was there a moment when you just fell in love, when you knew burlesque was right for you? Did you fall smack dab in love, or was it more of a slow burn?
That's a great question, Velvet. Because again, like you said, 12 years ago, it's like, okay, rewind. I was working in the fetish performance community before doing burlesque and working with them, and everything was super underground. And one of the fetish shows we were doing, there were two girls there doing burlesque. I didn't even know what the word was. One of them was a lady named Kitty Irreverent, who has become one of my best friends, and her and I do Southwest Burlesque. We produce Southwest Burlesque Showcase together now. Her and I later had a great friendship. Her and I went to Burlesque Hall of Fame for the first time. Back then it was Miss Exotic World. We went there together for the first time. But I saw her perform with Feather Fans, and I just looked at it and I was like, wow, I think I can do that. Because I was, I kind of came out from a dance team, and I was at the time teaching color guard for marching band. I was real comfortable in working in a group setting. And I guess I can also blame Rob Zombie and David Bowie for my creation of burlesque. Rob Zombie's Dragula came on the radio, and I was and I still had this it was still thinking about burlesque, and if I that those two performers resonated with me, and I'm just driving around or something, and Rob Zombie's Dragula came on the radio, and I was just so inspired by it. And I was like, well, I'd love to do burlesque, but I would love to do it with a group. I was envisioning my color guard background, and we had big racing flags, and we're twirling flags and taking our clothes off. And because I was coming from the fetish kind of goth community, I saw it being a darker version of what I saw burlesque for that first time. Right. And so I kind of just went for it, so to speak, Velvet. And back then there was no Facebook. I don't even think there was MySpace. or MySpace came like it's hard to remember like what social media was available.
Right.
But LiveJournal, I know for sure, and Yahoo groups were a thing.
I loved LiveJournal back then. Sorry.
Good. You were a LiveJournal.
I was a LiveJournal girl. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, fun.
And so I put a shout out on LiveJournal, and I put a shout out on this goth group on Yahoo groups. And I was just like, new burlesque troupe forming. I think I probably had to explain what it was. And I was like, meet here at this time in this place. And I wasn't sure anybody was going to come. And then 5 girls walked through the door. And suddenly I was like, okay, I guess this is happening. And I guess I need to figure this out and start leading these girls. And like, thankfully I had been a thespian in high school, and we did a show that was very music, video, dance oriented every year. So I kind of understood a format of a show. Because again, back then there was nothing to go off of. Like, we were all just kind of, those of us that were pioneering in our own little local communities, we're all just kind of flying by the seat of our pants and trying to figure out what we were doing, you know? And so it was like, okay, well, I guess I need to come up with several routines and somehow tell these girls what they're doing and put a show together. And it sold out with like 350 people.
Awesome.
And it was one of those moments where like, I thought like I was gonna like lose my breath and pass out because there were so many people there. I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And suddenly we had a show, and that group that I led, Burlesque Noir, we did it for 10 years. And I am so proud of the accomplishments that group has made. But yeah, so I think it kind of, it was a little bit of a slow burn just because I kind of saw it, and then it had to like sit and think. And then, like I said, Rob Zombie's Dragula came on the radio, and I was like, okay, I have to do this.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And what was your journey as far as like career wise? Like, I mean, I assume you were doing something else at the time, or were you just dancing at the time when you kind of discovered it?
I was in school. I was in college. I have 3 college degrees.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah. Because I couldn't figure out what I was doing. Started out as studio art, and then I'm actually a registered veterinary technician. And then my recent degree is in women's studies. And the reason I got that degree was basically because of burlesque. Honestly, my husband was actually the one that kind of pointed me in that direction. And he told me, he goes, you know, you do a lot of stuff that's extremely feminist. And he felt that I would be very interested in women's studies. And my senior project was actually on burlesque and what I've contributed, as far as creating a space for women to create art using their bodies. So I've been an academic most of the time. In fact, I'm getting kind of the itch to go back to school again to get a master's degree. But I think at the time, because I was in school, I was probably working at Hot Topic in the mall.
That's perfect. That seems right about right.
And so, you know, a lot of it, and I think this isn't that atypical of artists, you know, it's kind of like, you know, we're all kind of floating around. We can't always decide what we want to do other than we want to create this art. But what else do we do to pay our bills or whatever else? And so, yeah, there was a lot of that. I got a degree to be a vet tech and worked as a vet tech for several years, which led me to my current job working in fundraising for a major animal shelter here in town.
Oh, very cool.
So I feel really privileged to have that job. And, you know, I get to make a difference every day. So, yeah.
That's really great. Yeah, because you get to make a difference doing that during your kind of, quote, day job. And then you also are making a difference, you know, by doing this burlesque and by, you know, everything that you were studying with your women's studies and bringing these wonderful things to women and men all around the world.
And it was great because this year for Southwest Burlesque Showcase, the executive director at the animal shelter, she brought a group of her friends. I had about, I think, 15 people from my from my day job come and see me dance for the first time.
Cool.
And that really meant a lot to me. And so I'm really fortunate to have a really supportive job that loves what I do and totally supports it. So I feel pretty privileged.
Well, as anybody who listens to the show knows, I really like to talk about kind of reality and the fact that we're all human beings and we all, we fuck up, we do things, we make mistakes, all this kind of stuff. So one of my new favorite acronyms is AFOG, AFOG, which stands for Another Fucking Opportunity for Growth. This is one of those times when it's like something gets fucked up, you do something wrong or something bad happens to you or something like that. And we try to kind of we say that to ourselves to kind of try to reframe it as to look at it instead of a bad thing as something that can help us grow. So have you had any recent kind of AFOG moments where they were, something bad happened, but you were kind of like, you know what, I'm going to look at this as another fucking opportunity for growth?
Last weekend, Velvet.
There we go. Nice.
And so there's been a lot of like personal and emotional strife. In my life, personally, as well as unfortunately in the local burlesque community, there's just been a lot of change. And since I'm such a kind of known figure, a lot of it's been passing through my ears and causing a lot of strife. But anyway, I was producing a big Nerdlesque show that is attached to a little local con here. And I'm in charge every year of doing the after party for it. And we were doing some kind of new things. We were doing a really silly cosplay pageant as part of it. And we had a 15-act Nerdlesque show. And so I was kind of nervous because we were doing something kind of new. And I had been promoting, actually, as narcissistic as this sounds, I was promoting myself as the headliner for my own show. But I have this cosplay project called Harley Loves Deadpool that you can look up. And it's this cosplay project between my dance partner and I. But we have a Nerdlesque act attached to it. Well, some things came up with that. And on Wednesday of last week, he and I decided to cut the act, which was a really challenging decision to come to. And there was a lot of personal stuff involved with that. And there were some tears, maybe. But anyway, so we made the hard decision to cut the number. So we lost our headline. And then, of course, as Murphy would have it, bad things always get worse.
Sure.
And so I cut the act. We still had this cosplay pageant that I kind of was the only person that knew what was happening with the cosplay pageant because I created it in my own head. And so I needed to host the cosplay pageant. So earlier in the day, we're at the con, and I'd been selected as a daytime costume contest judge. So I'm sitting at the con, and the phone rings, and it's my son. So I have a 13-year-old son. I, of course, have to pick it up. And he says, "Mom, I need you to come get me. My dad's going to work." So I go, and it's 5:00. Show doors are at 8, and show is at 9. I'm like, oh, good God. So I go pick up my son, go home, and I'm dressed as Bombshell Black Canary. And I had planned to do a costume change because it was kind of a 2-part pageant. And so I was going to start out as Bombshell Black Canary, and then I was going to, for the next part, change and be the more familiar version of Black Canary. And so at the very last minute, I decided, you know what? I am going to do that costume change on stage as a burlesque act. Now, never in 10 years would I ever have recommended to anybody in my company to do improv burlesque. I'm kind of a fan of rehearse, and choreograph your number and et cetera, et cetera. And so since I came from the goth community, synth pop's a thing. And this song, Whisper to a Scream, came to my head, thinking of her sonic scream. And then I looked it up to see if I could find it, and the song is actually called Birds Fly. And I was like, okay, I'm totally in on this. I'm gonna do it. Yeah. I walked up to the DJ, who is a dear friend of mine. I said, so I'm gonna do this costume change on stage. I was like, this is the song I want, and basically, I'm just going to scream at the end and cut it off. It'll be really obvious when I'm over because I'm going to scream. So just start fading it then because it's a synth pop song. So you can't, they just trail on forever, with the same beat. So I got on stage and I kicked off that cosplay pageant. I introduced myself and said, how about I was like, something happened, and I have a family emergency, and I'm gonna have to leave this show, which is heartbreaking. I was gonna do a costume change, but what do you say I do it right here on stage? And I'm on the mic, and I'm watching my dear husband, who stage manages for me every single time. I had prepped all of my little garments because I had the fantastic idea of putting on an entire pair of fishnet pantyhose on stage. Keep in mind, this is all like brewing in my head in a matter of hours. And so I prepped those fishnets, and I prepped my little bodysuit so I could as easily as possible get into them. So it turned out backstage, my husband tipped over the tray with my costuming. He didn't know how to put it back together because he doesn't understand women's clothing. And so I'm on stage on the mic watching him set each one of my props totally wrong.
Oh, no.
And I threw my feather fans in the act as well. And so I watched him set those wrong. And I'm like trying to pander to the audience over the microphone. And inside I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the worst idea ever. Why am I doing this last minute? But I'm like, all right, I'm committed to it. I've told the audience I'm going to do it. All my props are on stage.
No going back now.
Yeah, no going back now. Here I go. So I did the number, and of course, putting on tights, as anybody can imagine, that's not ever probably gonna go well. But you know what? I did the number. I got some really beautiful photographs from it.
That's good.
And there's nothing more satisfying than screaming on stage. That's the second time I have an act where I've screamed on stage. So I got through the number, quickly packed up my stuff to get home to my son, and got home, and I was like, well, I will never, ever do that again. And then I realized that it was one of the most humbling experiences I've had in burlesque. And I even put on social media that it was a humbling experience that I needed and an opportunity for growth. Because I think when you've been doing this for a long time, you do get stagnant, and things in your community that wouldn't normally bother you start bothering you, or you don't know what direction you're going. And I think putting myself out there in a way that I never have, and challenging myself to just go on stage and do something raw and something I never dreamt I would do was really good. And then also to not have it go perfectly, because I think a lot of us, we get wrapped up in our performances, or at least I do, and think about, God, I wish I'd done that differently. Or you watch your video and you're like, oh, I look terrible, or whatever. And I know that performance is not great, but I went and did it. And then people, after they read that on social media, were like, I loved that number. They were like, there was something totally raw and something in the moment about it. And so I felt like that was a great opportunity for growth and a great moment for me to remember to take myself less seriously. Because I think we all need, as performers, I think we all need those moments where we get checked a little bit. You don't need to take yourself so seriously. We have a photographer, he turns around photographs real fast. And so next day we have photographs, and I look at them and I was like, they were so beautiful. And I was like, gosh, for doing improv burlesque, I was like, I will never do this again. But these photographs from Comic Kid Photography make it look like I did a good job.
That's great.
And so I definitely was dying inside. And then after seeing those photographs and thinking about it, I was like, God, that was an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for me to take myself less seriously. And it was incredibly humbling, and just a good reminder that, not every act has to be perfect, and you don't always have to be perfect on stage, and you can do things that are in the moment, and it can still be enjoyable. So it was a good moment and kind of a little bit of a check on myself. So yeah, definitely I had to have a day or two of reflection on it.
We usually do.
Yeah, and moments to laugh at myself. About the whole thing. I think it's really important to be able to laugh about yourself, and I don't do that enough. And so that also made me laugh about it a little bit. Like how funny was it that I was putting on an entire pair of pantyhose on stage? Who does that? Nobody does that. Like nobody would fathom to do do that because it would be so difficult to do, you know?
Yeah. I'm like, man, I look so ungraceful when I'm trying to do that at home. There's no way I would do that on stage. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a little bit crazy. But you know, like I said, I got beautiful photographs and the feedback I got was pretty good. And at the end of the day, I look back at it now and I was like, you know what, that was kind of fun.
Well, congratulations. I think that's great that you still, you went through with it, because you could have let fear kind of take over and that, whatever. And even though you had already said it to the audience, you could have just been like, you know what? Nope, never mind. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a change of plans, or something like that. But you still kind of went with it. And now you have a great story to tell when you're on podcasts.
Absolutely.
Which is great. So as an artist now, you've had a lot of changes in the last few months, last year or so, with closing down Burlesque Noir and everything like that. But what is your current biggest struggle as an artist?
Being an artist. The struggle is real. Being an artist, hands down. That is the struggle, is just being an artist.
In which way? Like making it work for yourself or everything?
So it kind of goes back a little bit to the last conversation about taking yourself too seriously. But more than anything, for me, at least, art feels compulsory for me. Like, I feel like I have to do it. And I get ideas in my head, and I'm an idea person to begin with. Like, I'm constantly thinking about what, like, a song comes on the radio. I'm like, how could I make this a burlesque act? Or, I see a costume piece somewhere and I'm like, I'm constantly thinking of ideas. And I almost it's always surprising to me what ideas actually make it to the stage. But for me, I'm very, very driven to make art and share art and teach other people and mentor other people to make art. And it does feel compulsory for me, and it does feel like it is very consuming in my life. And I definitely have had to actually very recently, like, check my priorities in a really kind of heartbreaking way. Because oftentimes me doing art comes before everything else in my life. And, when I say things like, I didn't create a great career where I'm making money because of art, I feel like a lot of times I've chosen art over lots of other things, like my relationship with my husband. It hasn't necessarily suffered because of art, but he's entrenched in it too, and so I think just being an artist is my biggest struggle, because it feels compulsory, and it's sometimes hard for me to, like, ground down, rein it in. Like, sometimes it's even hard for me to be like, okay, I'm going to clean the house today instead of sit here and rhinestone this costume,
Interesting. So kind of almost maybe finding that balance between the artistic life and, know.
It really at some point consumed my life. And that puts you in a pretty dangerous position, And one of the things that I've had to learn very recently is not to lose sight of who you are underneath, like, the glitter and the rhinestones, because there is a person there with a real name, with real feelings, and who has to make, like, real life choices, and I lost sight of that for several years. And so I am now just starting to explore some of that and explore who I am outside of Holly Rebelle. And remind myself that, there is a real person inside there. And a lot of people know me as Holly Rebelle, even locally. A lot of people don't know my real name. And they see me as a character on stage. And I'm sure lots of other performers relate to this. And they have expectations of you, of how you should act both on and off stage, and who you are. And they often forget that, or it doesn't even occur to them that, there is a real person there. And even just as the artist and public figure myself, me reminding myself that I have real feelings and they're valid and important. And so I think it's real easy to lose sight of who you are, especially as a performance artist, because we are seen as a character that's on stage, and there is an audience that is watching you, both on and off stage, thanks to social media, especially. Like, people are watching you all the time now. They're watching what you post on social media and how you post things. And, there's always the argument over, like, professionalism in burlesque and what is professional and what you should be and should not be posting on the internet. And at the end of the day, you know, we're all real people and we all make mistakes and we're all not at our best all the time. And we all, you know, are not so professional all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the biggest struggle for me is just being an artist and understanding like what your priorities are and how to ground and reminding yourself that you're a real person. And there is somebody behind the glitter and the rhinestones and also just being kind to yourself when you do make mistakes, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's something that I've been working with a lot, you know, as an artist and as just a human being is just that kindness. Yeah, absolutely. So important. So how about when you're preparing for a show? You've been performing a long time. I'm sure these your routines and everything have changed, not just your performance routines, but I mean your pre-show routines that you do for yourself, your rituals. But do you have any like particular preparation secrets that kind of help you either get in the move or get ready to perform?
For one, I think I mentioned this earlier. I'm a big fan of rehearsal. I'm definitely somebody who likes to rehearse the act. And I think some of that comes from having worked in a group. And so that is like, that's a big one for me is doing the work before you get to show day and doing as much of that preparation before. I'm also not a procrastinator at all. So I like to have things done as soon as the sooner the better. Yeah. So my biggest preparation secret is to do the prep before day of show and really have your act where you feel good and confident about walking on stage with it, you know, and have it in a place where you are feeling good about it because it's rehearsed, because you've put the time into your costume and you've practiced how to take off every piece, etc. So I like to do a lot of that prep work before the day of show.
That's good. That's smart. I have to say I come from the procrastination camp. I'm not thrilled about the fact that I'm in the procrastination camp because it's not a good thing, but it's been my whole life. Like I've always been this kind of person. And so I'm working on, getting better about that and all of that, but it's tough. And so good on you for being able to, and having that be part of your, your personality. And like you said, from working in group settings for so long, because when you're with groups, you can't put things off till the day of,
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not. Yeah.
That's probably why your AFOG moment was so big too, right? Like this idea of like improv, like especially for someone like you who is not the type to just kind of go on there and be like, all right, let's try something new today.
Yeah, no, not at all.
That's awesome. How about taking care of yourself? Do you have any particular self-care practices that really have meant a lot to you over the last however long?
That's a good question because self-care is something I'm working on all the time.
Yeah,
day of show, self-care for me is masturbation. I take my vibrator on the road with me. I take it to every festival I go to. And every day of show, I'm like, all right, it's orgasm time. I time out. I take that time out for myself. So that's a big one for me.
That's awesome.
And yeah. And even recently I went to our local sex positive sex store because my vibrator broke during Southwest Burlesque Showcase. And the owner says, I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself with this busy upcoming weekend you have, because they always promote our shows and whatnot.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So ladies, I'm just going to throw it out there. Try masturbating the day of show. It totally is like this great stress relief and you get some of that nervous energy out. So that's a big one for me.
That's awesome. Now, of course, you don't have to go into details, but do you have a whole routine or ritual that kind of goes along with it too? Like when you do it, do you kind of get yourself in the mood so that you feel nice and sexy and all of that?
No,
you just gotta go right to it, down and dirty. Just
down
do
and
it.
dirty, yeah, for sure. Because day of show, especially when you're at festivals, it's always chaotic, and it's hard enough for me to even try to eat twice before the show. You know what I mean?
Right.
So whenever I have like 10 minutes there, it's like, all right, time to get some energy out. Where's the vibrator?
I love that. That's awesome. And that's funny. That's not really something we've talked about all that much on the podcast so far, but I have been getting, in my own personal life, I've been getting more into like, the sex positive community and things like this. And we haven't really talked about like masturbation as a way of, getting your performance energy out, or getting even like for creativity and things like that, especially because our acts tend to be so sexual.
Absolutely.
So if we can get that sexual energy kind of going, whether it's by yourself with masturbation or with a partner or with multiple partners or whatever you're doing, whatever you got going on. Yeah. That's really cool. I love that you mentioned that as a self-care practice. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. So pack that vibrator, ladies. I pack mine everywhere I go.
Actually, that transitions quite nicely into our next question, which is all about your burlesque backstage kit. Apparently, we know you have a vibrator in there, but what else do you have? What's one or two other things that you always have in that kit for you?
The vibrator probably doesn't come to backstage.
Okay, fair enough. That's true.
It definitely comes on the road. It definitely goes on the road. Okay, for sure. I can't leave home without it. But I am like, as much as I have prefaced myself as a non-procrastinator, and I like to prepare as much as possible. And I do like to like pack my costume and stuff the day before, all of that business. I am not the girl that has the burlesque backstage kit. Okay. Like, if you need a safety pin, I am not the girl to talk to. I like pack the like bare necessities I need. I pack my lipstick, and my lip glitter. So those two things are definitely in there. But yeah, for the most part, I kind of go bare bones. I don't have an emergency kit.
Fair enough.
And thankfully I haven't really ever needed one. I pack bobby pins. I wear a lot of wigs. Cool. So I definitely have bobby pins to pin those wigs in. But yeah, I am not like the girl with extra stuff in case of emergency.
Well, that probably kind of makes sense. I mean, because you aren't a procrastinator, you have your stuff set up ahead of time. Also, there's the fact that you've been doing this for so long as well. There probably isn't quite as much of a need for, this emergency kit, between the fact that you plan so much ahead of time and you've got 12 years under your belt where you've already had the emergencies happen. So theoretically, I'm going to knock on wood for you right now because I probably just jinxed it. But
I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry. All right. So right before we start to kind of wrap this up, I do want to do, just very quickly, because we are, chatting a lot, which is great. But I wanted to add in a little bit recently for the last few episodes called Controversy Corner, because I see a lot happening all over on Facebook and other places that I interact with burlesque performers, where there's often a lot of controversy surrounding different topics in the community. And of course, I like to preface this, for everybody listening, know that we are just kind of spitballing here. These are not prepared opinions about these things. We're probably going to say some things that might offend, we might not offend anybody, but, we may not say our pieces quite perfectly in the way that we might want to. So this is not going to be perfect, but we're just kind of getting these things out there. So I'd love to talk with you, Holly, a little bit about this idea. As someone who's been performing for 12 years, you've experienced a lot of different things from producers, from things like that. How do you feel about this whole idea of performing for exposure?
Oh, okay. So performing for exposure. That topic has been around for quite a while.
Yep.
It's interesting for me, though, because when I started burlesque, I didn't even know, or it wasn't even on my radar, that burlesque was something that you would get paid for. I, was doing burlesque in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the Southwest. There wasn't, at the time, even a whole lot going on. There was probably next to nothing going on in Arizona. There was some stuff going on in Colorado. But, I was really kind of in a vacuum. New Mexico's a real big state. There was, it's hard to drive anywhere that's, it's like 6 hours to get anywhere. So in my world, and having come from just where I was located, I didn't even understand that people got paid. And so when I started, it was a volunteer dance company. I didn't know any other way to run it. I didn't understand you could even make a business of burlesque. That kind of carried through my 10 years of doing BN. I mentored like probably 50 people, and definitely 15 dancers for the last 5 years who have become very, very good dancers and very, very good burlesque performers here in our region. But I did all that work for free and never asked anybody to pay me for it. In fact, quite the opposite. I was pumping in a lot of money to keep the dance company going and to buy costumes for my troupe. And so the idea of getting paid was something that was not on my radar, especially for the first couple years. And then I had a performer from out of state contact me about performing in one of our shows. And it was a big wake up call because she asked for money. And that didn't even occur to me that that's what you do. That idea really didn't sink in with me until a couple years into my career. The concept for me, I think it's really what you feel good about. If money is not important to you, it's not important to you. Like, money is not important to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent, so much money to keep a dance company going, Right. The other downside, though, is I have noticed that when you're taking a lot of free gigs or a lot of exposure gigs, that does lead to burnout. One of the best things you can do is learn to say no in this business and that there's always more gigs and to figure out what your values are with those gigs, whatever that is, whether it be money or you're trying a new act that might be risky. You might want to take that exposure gig because that's an opportunity for you to try out a new act that maybe you're unsure is going to be in the rotation the next time around. And so I think it's really coming down to like figuring out what your values are as a performer and following those values when you're deciding to take a gig. At this point, I'm kind of in a position where I can pick and choose gigs. I know in the beginning, it's harder for new performers to be in that position, and they kind of take everything they can, which they should. That's how you get experience. But I'm not necessarily in the camp of you should never ever perform for free. I also like to perform for charities.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's super important to me. I work for a nonprofit. And so for me, it's kind of like this measure of what my values are, what's important to me, reminding myself that there's always more gigs. And sometimes, at this point though, sometimes the money is great. I'm like, all right, if you're gonna, pay me this amount of money, I'll absolutely do whatever you want,
Yeah.
But I'm in a position where I can say that, which is a great place to be. And sometimes, I definitely will take paying gigs over non-paying gigs. And I kind of have overbooked myself at the moment. Which happens from time to time. But, I really try to like stick to the 2 gigs per month, like learn to say no, Yeah,
absolutely.
And so sometimes the paying gigs at this point will override that, and I also think, we all perform or a lot of us perform for exposure and we don't really always think of it as exposure. Festivals are basically exposure gigs. Right. And you have to decide if that exposure and that experience is worthwhile to you. You're paying a lot of money to travel somewhere to not get paid. But, you get to meet new people and you get to perform in a different city on a different stage, So I think a lot of us perform for exposure more than we maybe recognize on some level. But I also, like I said, I think it just comes down to what you want to get out of your own burlesque experience.
Absolutely. And I would agree with you. And I think, it's important that you make a good point that it's more than just exposure, usually. I mean, there's other aspects. There's the networking you'll get to do. There's the seeing of other people's gig or of numbers. There's more to it than that often, is the case. And real quick, I mean, how do you kind of feel about the whole idea that perhaps, some of us performing for free kind of impacts the industry as a whole and encourages producers to offer gigs to us for free?
Yeah, I think it's challenging. And I think it's I think this is a good topic. There's a lot of art forms that you don't ever get paid. And I think one of the struggles in burlesque in general is that we are a relatively new art form as far as the neo-burlesque community that started in the 90s is concerned. And so all of us are pioneering a new art form, and we're all still trying to figure it out. And so some of these things that are controversial or that we're talking about, it's great that we're talking about them. And they are sensitive and difficult issues, and they're polarizing sometimes. But we all, at the end of the day, have to remember there's not really rules in burlesque yet. And there's not even gatekeepers in burlesque right now. You know, like you look at like yoga or like ballroom dance or even like ballet that's been around forever. You know, you can't just say, hey, I'm a prima ballerina and, you know, get on stage and do it. You know, you have to start from 5 years old, and your parents have to have a certain amount of money to put you in dance class. And, you know, and then you have to go through an audition process that is really brutal, you know, or like in yoga, you know, you have to pay a lot of money to get a teacher's license or you know, a teacher training, and you learn from somebody who's already gone through that. And so there's a whole gatekeeping process there that we don't have in burlesque right now. And so I think a lot of these controversial topics are things that are great that our industry should be talking about, but we all need to remember that we are still figuring these things out. And that it is difficult, and it is polarizing, and it does cause conflict in our community, and challenging. I keep going back to challenging and complicated feelings, and feelings that change. You know, or sometimes I find myself in a position where I'm like, God, why is this upsetting me? Like, logically, this should not upset me, but I'm being upset about it. You know. In terms of burlesque. And then I kind of have to remind myself, you know, we're all just trying to figure this out. I mean, even still, you know, I mean, 12 years ago, I was really figuring it out. And now that we've gotten to a place where there is a great thriving festival circuit, and local communities are thriving with lots of shows all over the nation. Even smaller towns have burlesque now, you know. So that's great and wonderful, but now we're starting to kind of dig into some of these deeper issues, you know, like exposure gigs, like cultural appropriation, you know, some of these deeper issues, like not having gatekeeping, and anybody can declare themselves a burlesque performer, and, you know, and who should teach and who shouldn't teach. And I mean, even little things of, should you walk on stage barefoot? You know, all of these things come up. And I think it's most important, and it's super important that we are talking about them, because we are trying to sort this out, and we are trying to like figure out this art form. And the fact that we have an art form that we kind of have all decided, seemingly universally, that people should get paid for, it's kind of unique if you think about it. You know, community theater people do it out of love, you know, and none of them are getting paid, you know.
That's true.
Community dance, I mean, there's a lot of community dance groups in town, or, you know, in your town or whatever. So I think, you know, we've kind of all universally agreed that artists should get paid. I think that's great. And that's a great idea. There's a lot of great ideas, though, you know, that are great on paper. Oh my God. I think I was just about to blame the patriarchy and capitalism, you know, or capitalism. You know, capitalism looks great on paper, but it doesn't always work, you know. And I think it's a great, and getting paid kind of falls under capitalism. And, you know, I'm sorry, I'm a women's studies major, and, you know, capitalism is part of the patriarchy. And so, I totally blame the patriarchy.
You should see me. I'm like nodding vigorously along with you right now. I'm like, yes, girl.
Everything goes back to blaming the patriarchy.
Preach, girl.
Yeah. So, and so getting paid, you know, on some level, you know, does buy into capitalism, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but, you know, a lot of things are great on paper, but, you know, as our scene gets bigger and grows and more people want to do it, is there really even going to be the capital available for everybody to get paid? You know, I mean, is there something wrong with like student showcases, for instance? I don't know that the capital will be there for every show to get paid, you know? So I think it's just a matter of understanding that our burlesque scene is new. and it's growing, and it's rapidly growing, and we're all just trying to figure this stuff out. And so it's great that you have this topic on your podcast. I think it's wonderful. I love that we have social media where this stuff comes up, because we do need to talk about it. And maybe probably not in my lifetime, but, you know, if burlesque keeps thriving and growing, you know, hopefully it will be a little more sorted out. You know, I've seen issues get sorted out, like cultural appropriation. Like 12 years ago, that wasn't a topic. You can go back and see some very well-known performers do acts that would be called out for cultural appropriation today. I've seen them, you know, that just wasn't a topic that was understood in the community at the time. And now, you know, now we kind of have this standard of cultural appropriation because we've talked about it, and lots of voices were heard, you know, that were very important. And we have made that change. And it's a change in the community I'm very proud of. I hope as we continue to talk about these issues that more change happens and we do grow in a positive way.
Oh, I agree fully. And I think you're absolutely right. I think having the conversation is the catalyst for that in a lot of ways, you know, outside of burlesque as well, you know, conversation, just listening, because we have to keep in mind that it's a conversation. It's not preaching our ideals onto people. It's having this conversation and listening to what other people have to say.
Absolutely.
So, well, great. Those are some awesome insights. I love what you said, especially about like the idea of like community theater, because I was always very involved in community theater. But I just hadn't really like made that connection to, like, we don't get paid for that. We didn't think it was weird that we didn't get paid because we knew we were doing it as not as a hobby. Well, I mean, kind of a hobby, but I guess just more out of the love for it, you know? So it's an interesting parallel. And I think you're absolutely right. And it's important as well, I think, not to vilify all producers who are trying to put on shows and can't afford to pay. Because I think that's a trend that we see a lot as well. They're like, oh, this person's not offering any money. Why would they do that? You know, and everything. So man. All right. So enough of this, kind of heavier topic. We'll move on from that a little bit. The next little section before we start to wrap up is something I like to call Pick Your Poison. This is just for us to get a chance to get to know you a little bit better as a human being, Miss Holly, because you are, as you said, there is something down underneath all the rhinestones and glitter and all of that. And that is a real human being. Yeah. So it's going to be just one quick question. I've got 11 options listed, so I just need you to pick a number 1 through 11.
Let's go with 7.
Number 7. All right, I shuffled these up. So we've got, what is one app besides Facebook that you use every day?
Oh, I love Instagram. I'm a huge Instagrammer. I'm a huge visual person. And so I never get tired of seeing boobs, your pets.
Indeed.
I never get tired of it. I never get tired of seeing you with no makeup on vacation, having a good time. I love it. I'm so visual. I love seeing pictures. I love seeing what other people are seeing in the moment. And so I'm a huge Instagram user. Cool. I look at it every single day. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big Instagram as well. What is your Instagram handle, just by the way?
My Instagram handle is Holly Rebelle, my name, and my cosplay handle is Harley Loves Deadpool. So you can find me at both of those Instagrams.
Sweet. That's awesome. We'll get more links from you later. And just for everybody listening, of course, you'll be able to find all of the links for everything that we're mentioning and all of the ways to get in touch with Holly. Those will be over at the show notes page for this episode, which will be at burlesquestripdown.com/Holly, HOLLY. You'll be able to get that. So yeah, I'm a big Instagram fan as well. And I've actually gotten a little bit, I'm not huge into it as much as I love Instagram, but I'm a little bit into Snapchat lately. I've kind of been enjoying that as just a way to see like really even more, because even now Instagram has become, people are more curating a little bit. They're being more careful about what they put on. It's less raw. It's less real in some situations. Yeah. And I find that Instagram is just more fun because it's just like people are just doing whatever the fuck they want. Yeah, like it's just it's random stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. So, all right. Next up, we're doing a little this or that. This is our quick fire, our rapid fire section. And you just get to choose. I will give you 2 options and you choose which one you prefer.
Fire away.
I always say you can interpret these in any way you like. Okay. All right. Whatever you want. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Let's do it. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Dunkin' Donuts all the way.
Yes. Thank you.
I love donuts are probably my favorite confection. So hands down, Dunkin' Donuts.
So good. And their hash browns are so good and everything. Oh my gosh. So good. Okay. City or country?
I'm a little bit of both. My husband is from New York City, and we are likely looking to retire there. But, cool. I love driving out to the country, riding some horses, and looking at the stars. Yeah, I'm a little bit of both. I definitely love the adventure of a big city, but, I love the taking some time to ground out, go out to the country. Like I said, I love to horseback ride, so definitely like a little bit of both.
So if you had to pick one?
Oh, God, you're really going to make me do that.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to push you on this one.
Oh, God. All right. Well, I'd have to go with the city then.
I just was curious. I was like, she sounds split on this. I don't like people being split. You got to pick one.
Pick one. All right. Now I don't. All right.
No, it's all right. Movies or TV shows?
TV shows.
How about Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini?
Well, that's not a nice question now, is it?
Well, they're both lovely. We all know.
We all love them both.
We do. I mean, that's a given.
Let's go with Dita.
With Dita. How about a dirty martini or a pint of beer?
Well, I don't drink alcohol anymore.
Fair enough. So that is a moot question for you.
But when I did, I was definitely hands down a beer drinker.
Gotcha. All right, cool. How about day or night?
I'm a day person.
Now, we didn't actually get into the story behind your name, but we talked a little bit in the pre-show chat, so I think I already know the answer to this question. How about Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Yeah, that's a given. My last name is Rebelle, picked after the Rebel Alliance insignia on my back, so I gotta go Star Wars.
Love it. Girl after my own heart. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Those rebels. Good. How about top or bottom?
I'm a total bottom.
Mountains or ocean?
Ooh,
and no, you can't say both. I won't let you.
Well, I don't live near an ocean.
Okay.
I live near a giant mountain range, and so I get the privilege of seeing mountains every day. And so I'm going to go with ocean because when I get that opportunity, it's really great. So I'm going to go with the ocean.
There you go. All right. How about classic or neo burlesque?
God, you're making it tough.
I know.
I have to go with neo burlesque, but I really, really, really admire classic burlesque and the performers that execute it so eloquently. But at the end of the day, I'm definitely a neo burlesque girl.
See, here on Burlesque Strip Down, we ask the real nitty gritty questions, like this next one: peanut butter or jelly?
Oh, well, I'm allergic to peanuts. So,
okay. So that's an easy one for you.
yeah. So jelly all the way.
Fair enough. Comedy or tragedy?
Aren't they the same thing?
Basically, just with time, right? Comedy is just tragedy plus time. Isn't that what they say?
No, because I'm really into stand-up comedy lately, and
nice.
you've got to have a tragic, dark, self-loathing life to do it. So I kind of think they're one and the same. At the end of the day, as a performer, I'm definitely a tragedy girl, and I get a lot of inspiration from tragedy. So I'll go with tragedy.
All right, sounds good. How about Marvel or DC?
Oh, Jesus. You're asking the nitty gritty.
It's true.
As a cosplayer, I cosplay Harley Quinn, and everybody knows me as Harley Quinn. And I cosplay more in the DC universe, but I have a tattoo of Captain America on my leg. I have no DC tattoos, and I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with Marvel.
Wow, really? All right, I'll take it. How do you feel about the new Suicide Squad movie that's coming out?
I'm excited about it. Actually, maybe I can take that answer back and say DC. That's a tough one.
One of the
things I love about DC is how dark it is, and how more it's real human to me. And going back to tragedy, I feel like it's a lot more tragic on some levels. So yeah, maybe I'll take that back and say DC, but I'm super excited about the new Suicide Squad. Yeah,
it looks really interesting. I don't know how I feel about it, but it looks interesting.
It looks interesting. I'm definitely going to go see it. So yeah, I'll definitely be there to see it.
Cool. How about sleep or sex?
Sex.
No question.
Sleep.
All right.
What artist sleeps anyway?
Sleep is for losers. I just love sleep so much, but I'm getting enough of it. Yeah, I do. I love sleeping.
God,
it's
if
great.
I could figure out how to do it on a regular basis.
I hate that I love sleeping, but I love it. It just feels so good.
I like to take a good nap. Does that count?
Yeah, that definitely counts. Yeah, for sure. How about heels or bare feet?
Are we talking about burlesque in general, or are we just talking about life?
as you like, which you can interpret this any way you like. So if it's different, you can tell us both answers.
Oh, okay, I see. You know what? I'm just gonna. I'm not really gonna get into this conversation because I'm long-winded, clearly, and I have lots of feelings about this topic. But I'm gonna go with bare feet.
Bare feet. Yeah. All right. That seems like a good one to end it on. Very nice. Yeah. So bare feet overall. All right. Yeah. Very good. Now, before we wrap up here, I always like to ask, the internet is a vast, wide place. The world is a vast, wide place. So how do you typically stay current on burlesque news?
You know, I don't have a great answer for that one. I'm a social media junkie, as we all are, because we have to promote ourselves. So, you know, I get a lot of it on Facebook. I occasionally drop by 21st Century Magazine, that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, so I don't necessarily go much past that, I guess. And definitely just... I do like to talk about burlesque, though, and so a lot of it for me is word of mouth, and I have a couple of real close burlesque friends, and sometimes they'll say, "Hey, did you see this article?" And they'll bring my attention to it, and I really love talking it out. So I think a lot of it for me is word of mouth and going back to, you know, having conversations about these things. So.
Well, that's good. That's a good way to do it. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I asked this question and it's starting to feel like kind of an almost irrelevant question nowadays because, you know, I feel like a couple of years ago, maybe it was a little bit different, but now social media has just like taken over everything that it's just basically Facebook, you know, it's or Instagram or whatever it is. And then word of mouth, of course, the people were around in person. But And then, of course, there's also videos all over the interwebs.
There is.
So do you have a couple of YouTube videos you can tell us about, and I will add into the show notes for this episode, maybe one of you or your troupe or whatever you like to share, and then one that you can't get enough of right now?
Sure. So I'm going to go with one of mine would be my Jackie Kennedy number. It's probably the number that I am most well known for. And it comes up from time to time, like on social. Somebody recently tagged me in somebody's comment that was like, "Hey, name some memorable burlesque acts," and somebody tagged me in it. Holly Rebelle's Jacqueline Kennedy number. Nice. Yeah, so I definitely will go with that one. I headlined Boston Burlesque Festival with that number, and it definitely leaves an impression. So to speak.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, cool. And how about something that you can't get enough of right now?
Right now. Well, you know what? It's actually something I haven't ever stopped loving. And when I'm having a bad day or I'm feeling down about burlesque or whatever, my immediate go-to is Indigo Blues Step Down number at Beehoff. I fortunately was there to see it live. And I've had the privilege of spending some time with Indigo Blue. She stayed at my house. And that number to me just like embodies burlesque and the spirit of burlesque. You know, I just love it. Very and cool. So I definitely go back to that number every single time and jam out to it. And it's just, so I definitely, if you have not seen that number, I definitely recommend getting on YouTube and looking for Indigo Blue at Beehoff Step Down number and go find it because it's fabulous.
Sweet. That's awesome. Well, don't worry, everybody. We will actually have I'll have these videos actually embedded in the show notes page too. So you'll be able to go to burlesquestripdown.com/Holly, HOLLY, and that'll bring you right to the show notes page for this episode where you'll be able to see everything, including those cool videos. And you'll be able to link up to Holly because I'm sure everybody listening now is just obsessed with you and wants to get in touch with you and find out what you're doing. And especially all these like, you know, crowd challenging numbers that you'll be coming out with and all of this. So we want to stay up and we want to keep in touch with you. What are the best ways to do that?
The best way, you know what? I'm so open. You know, anybody is always welcome to email me. My email address is hollyrebelle@burlesquenoir.com. I'm always happy to answer questions. You can message me on Facebook. And friend request me on Facebook. I love meeting new people.
And is it just Holly Rebelle on Facebook?
Yep, I'm Holly Rebelle. Nobody has name policed me.
Nice.
But you'll like this, Velvet. If I do get name policed, I am going to change my name to my nemesis, whose name is Molly Imperial. So, so until that happens, I'm Holly Rebelle.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Imperial.
Yeah, Imperial.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. And then, of course, we had your Instagram as well, right?
Instagram. And I have a website, hollyrebelle.com. I have all of my acts that are in rotation that have video. They're all posted there. So I do have a website. And I have an Instagram. Those are, that's the main ways to get in touch with me. And like I said, I love answering questions. I love chit-chatting. So hit me up.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure that everyone will be very anxious to do that. We would love to hear from you as well. For those of you listening, definitely send us emails on everything that we talked about. Especially, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this controversy corner that we talked about with the idea of performing for exposure. I know it's oft talked about, but we still need to keep that conversation going. So definitely join the conversation in on that and get in touch with Holly. Holly, darling, I know we could have talked forever more, especially about Star Wars and things like that.
For sure.
It would have been amazing. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up this interview. For everybody listening, go ahead and make sure that you tune in later this week for our Hot Tips episode with Holly. She's going to be sharing some of her favorite tips from, 12 years of performing. She's a professional. She knows what the fuck she's doing. So it's going to be great. Holly, was there anything else you wanted to share with our audience today?
Oh, no, but thank you guys for listening. And this has been so much fun. So thank you, Velvet.
Well, good. It's our pleasure to have you. Thank you. And you can come back anytime, okay?
Perfect.
And there you have it. She's amazing, right? Lots of really fun stories to share. I loved chatting with her. I could have gone on for hours and hours, I think, with that. If you loved Holly, check her out. All of the links, again, over at burlesquestripdown.com/Holly, HOLLY. Definitely also tune in later this week when we will have a short and sweet episode where Holly shares one of her favorite tips. I'll give you a little hint. It's about staying nice and sparkly when you're on stage, which we, of course, always want to do. Well, maybe not always. Not every act calls for sparkliness, but a lot of them do. So definitely tune in later this week. Just so everyone knows, I am also working on my next round of interviews. So if you or someone you know would be a fabulous guest on Burlesque Strip Down, please don't hesitate to send me an email, velvet@burlesquestripdown.com. I would love to chat with as many different people as possible from as many corners of the world as possible. So thank you again so much for listening. Connect with us all over the place. I would love to hear from you over on Twitter, Velvet Eau Claire, Instagram, Velvet Eau Claire. Facebook is Burlesque Stripped Down is my Facebook page. I would love to hear. Those are my primary three. I did notice that Instagram just started doing these little story type things, which are very similar to Snapchat stories. So that could be something interesting to explore. If you're using those, definitely send me a message and let me know how it's going so far. So definitely don't hesitate to be in touch. As always, I haven't received many voicemails, and I'm pretty upset about it. So your mission, if you're still listening right now, go over to burlesquestripdown.com, either on your computer or on your phone, and hit the little leave me a message button. It's over on the right-hand side of any page that you visit, and you can just leave a little short, up to 90 seconds, little hello, how you doing? If you want, I'll play it on the podcast. If not, it'll just be for me to hear your beautiful voice, because I want to know who you are. Of course, you can always subscribe, rate, and review over in iTunes or your favorite podcast player as well. That will help me out greatly as I work to kind of appear more in the search rankings and let myself, my beautiful little scratchy voice today, come in front of more listening ears. So thank you all again so much for supporting me and for listening and for everything that you do. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I will be back with you again with Holly later this week. But until then, ladies and gents, make sure that you stay sexy.